Yeah, I mean, if we look at, Western industrialized countries, countries that are like Canada in terms of their economic and political development, the main voting systems that are used around the world are majoritarian systems and proportional systems. Majoritarian systems are systems that tend to create majority governments, legislative majority governments, governments that have a majority of the votes in the legislature. Though, of course, they don't often actually have a majority of the votes, but they get a majority of the seats. And then we have the proportional systems. And the proportional systems, as I've said, they tend to produce fairly transparent results. If you got 20% of the votes, you get 20% of the seats. Those are the two big options. Most Western industrialized countries use some form of proportional representation. And if we look at our particular voting system, first past the post, a version of a majoritarian system, only 3 Western industrialized countries still use it: Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. STV, the single transferable vote, is one of the 3 main kinds of proportional representation. It's a voting system. It's a way of translating votes into seats. Now, most PR systems translate votes into seats pretty transparently. Get 20% of the votes, you get 20% of the seats. STV is a really interesting kind of proportional representation because it actually puts the voter in the driver's seat. The voter decides not just who are the parties that will get elected, but also who are the individuals within that party that will get elected. For the voter, STV is really straightforward. It's a lot easier than using, say, a bank machine. All you have to do in STV is number your choices. 1, 2, 3. If you can write 1, 2, 3, you can vote by STV. In terms of the way the system functions, how it actually does the work, well, that is complicated, but it's fairly straightforward in terms of the logic. If you've got a 5-member riding, a multi-member riding, then to get elected, you need to get about 1/5 of the votes in that area. And that's the way the system would produce the proportional results. The count is it's a fascinating process. If you can go and watch an STV count, it's really interesting. Of course, now we have computers and paper ballots for the computers, and all of it can be done instantly. But imagine we were watching an STV count. The returning officer dump all the ballots on the table. The first thing they would do is count up all the first choices that have been marked by the ballot. And if someone had reached the quota, remember, you got a 5-member riding, let's say the quota would be about 20%. If somebody had got 20% of the first choices, they'd be declared elected. That'd be it. But let's say they got more than 20%, more than the quota. Let's imagine they got twice the quota. Well, what that would mean is that that individual would actually only need half of each ballot that was cast for them. If you think of it kind of like having $1 to spend, it would mean that you'd be spending 50 cents on that candidate. Then the other 50 cents could go to help someone else get elected. You only have one vote, $1, if you will. You're not getting anything more than anyone else. But because STV is such a sophisticated voting system, just one vote might help a number of people to get elected. It may surprise people to discover that millions of Canadians have already used STV. We have a long history of voting system reform in this country. In the 1920s, there was a lot of experimentation with different voting systems. 19 municipalities across Western Canada, including 9 here in British Columbia, adopted STV for local elections. 2 provinces adopted STV for the urban ridings in their provinces, Alberta and Manitoba, and they adopted the alternative vote, the single-member riding majority system, for their rural areas. So we have lots of experience, 35 years of experience of using STV in those provinces. So the idea that somehow this will work in Canada, won't fit with our traditions, bunk. We have used it. It's a part of our traditions already. And it's interesting to note that the reason the system was gotten rid of was not the public. The public wasn't crying out for change. In both cases, it was the political elites who saw an opportunity to get rid of a system that they felt was no longer serving their interests.